everybody, this is Noelle from Petitti Garden Centers, and we're here at Oakwood Village, and we are going to do a spotlight on Oakleaf hydrangeas. Now, keep in mind, this is one of the 6 hydrangea families that we typically grow. There are so many different species of hydrangeas, but Oakleaf is one of our favorites, and I'll tell you why in just a few. But just so you know, the Latin name of this plant is Hydrangea quercifolia, and quercus is the Latin name for oak. So there you go, quercifolia, oak leaf, okay? So that's what you see when you look at these hydrangeas, and that's one of their best attributes, of course, are their very large, bold-looking, lobed, oak leaf-like foliage. And I'll tell you, this plant has awesome fall color too. But before I get too far ahead of myself, I'll go back to what we need to do to succeed growing these hydrangea. Now, I should tell you that these hydrangea are native to the U.S., actually the southeastern U.S., okay? So they do grow very well in our soils, different soil conditions. They do a very, very good job in. They're one of the few hydrangea that we grow that is native to the U.S., okay? The other one is going to be smooth hydrangea. So with Oakleaf hydrangea, what do you need to know to be successful? The first thing is the sun conditions. And I'm going to tell you, this plant is best in part shade, like most of the hydrangea species that we talk about, okay? It really likes that part shade condition, 4 to 6 hours of direct sunlight. And if you can find an eastern exposure where it gets morning sun and then gets shaded in the evening, that is ideal for this hydrangea. This hydrangea can also take lighting up to full sun, but the caveat here is it's got to stay evenly moist in its soil, because boy, does this hydrangea burn. And it is one of the hydrangeas that can get leaf scorched pretty easily, even with overhead watering, and the sun comes through and refracts through the water droplets. So this plant does burn fairly easy. So again, your best place is going to be part shade. This hydrangea also is excellent in deeper shady conditions too. So I'm going to tell you, part shade is ideal, but if you have a shade condition where you have 4 hours or less of direct sunlight, it does a pretty good job and can still flower for you. Sure, the flowers might not be as abundant in the shade, and your foliage fall color might not be as spectacular in the shade, but they'll still do a nice job for you in a shadier part of the garden. Okay, so sun, all different kind of conditions, just depends on what you would like to do with them. Part shade's the best. Next thing is soil. So in southeastern United States, where they grow tends to be in moist wooded areas by riverbanks and streams. So again, that moisture does play a part. So you do want evenly moist soil, on average, well drained, okay? Once they're established, they can take a little bit of drought, but like all hydrangeas, you will see them wilt pretty quickly when they get into too hot, too dry conditions. And it really has to do with hydrangea root systems. They tend to be a little bit more shallow. And so that's why we always recommend putting that 1 to 2 inch layer of summer mulch around the plant material to, of course, shade the root system, keep the moisture in the soil. That's always going to benefit all hydrangeas. Okay, so make sure you do that. This other part of this is watering now. And of course, like most hydrangeas, they like soil moisture. Not overly wet, because they really don't want to sit in water, and they don't want to be too dry. So again, that sort of medium moisture is really good for them. And of course, when you first plant a plant, we always talk about providing them 1 inch of water one time per week, slow, deep watering. And that's when you don't have any rainfall. If you have a 1/2 inch of rainfall, all you have to do is supplement the other 1/2 inch for that week. But you want to make sure that you're doing that slow, deep watering, let's say with a soaker hose or dripper irrigation. And even if you want to put the garden hose on a trickle and just place it at the base of the plant and let it run for, let's say, an hour or so, that is a slow, deep watering. And guess what? The root system of that plant is going to move deeper into the soil, trying to follow that water. And that is always going to be great for any type of plant material that you're trying to establish, okay? So do remember that as far as the moisture is concerned. Fertilizer. These are deciduous shrubs. They're sort of rounded, obviously broad-leaved, very, very nice, but they'll lose those leaves in late fall. And so we tend to plant and fertilize our deciduous shrubs with plant tone and iron tone. And we will use plant tone and iron tone in the spring when you start to see that flush of new growth come out, and also mid-summer, okay? So for us in Northeast Ohio, anytime between mid-July, early August, that's going to be a great time for that mid-summer feeding when things are kind of looking a little bit peaked. They're just trying to deal with the summer heat and humidity and all those types of things too. So keep that in mind. Plant tone and iron tone are great for these hydrangea. And you don't have to worry about pH with these hydrangeas, so I should mention that too. We tend to just use a balanced fertilizer like plant tone, and it's not acidic. And it's because all of your panicle hydrangea are going to produce this beautiful creamy white panicle flower. Some might be longer, shorter, stockier, what have you. But this flower will always start that kind of creamy white color, maybe with a little touch of lime green here and there when they're nice and young. And then as they develop, you will see them start to produce those blush pink colors, maybe even redder tones as they move and kind of mature, if you will, into the fall. But that is not anything that has to do with soil pH like your macrophylla hydrangea. So just be aware of that. Plant tone, iron tone are great for them. Okay, next thing is maintenance. And I'm going to say that these hydrangea are going to be medium maintenance. And the reason being is it's because of their pruning, their winter protection, and also their protection from deer browsing. Okay, so let's talk about pruning. The Oakleaf hydrangea are very similar to macrophylla or mophead type hydrangeas as far as pruning is concerned. The reason being is that these plants produce buds and blooms on old wood, okay? So if you can protect the hydrangeas over the winter with an anti-desiccant spray that you apply, let's say late fall, the foliage has come off, you go ahead and apply that anti-desiccant spray to the stems, take your piece of burlap, wrap the entire plant, and make sure that you're protecting those stems. That you are always going to have a better chance of having good bud growth and better flowering the next growing season, okay? In that, there is a certain amount of winter dieback. It depends in our area, and we're in zone 6. There's a certain amount of winter dieback that Oakleaf hydrangeas and macrophylla hydrangeas do experience. And it has to do with that winter desiccation. Cold, dry winters are just not friendly to these plants at all. So what we say with the macrophylla hydrangea and also with the Oakleaf hydrangea is wait until the plant just starts to flush out new growth, and you are going to remove the 3 Ds down to the uppermost growth. The 3 Ds, as I've mentioned many times before, is diseased, damaged, and dead areas on that plant. And again, winter dieback happens. So maybe you have winter dieback on the top few inches of your Oakleaf hydrangea. then you can go ahead and just prune down to remove it to that uppermost green growth that is pushing out. Shape that plant the way that you want, and you're ready to go. Clean out any of those dried, dead stems out of the center of the plant, and that plant is ready to go for pruning. The rest of the season, let the plant do its thing. And then when we get into, let's say, July, the plant has kind of gone through its bloom cycle. If you do want to prune it back to control some of the height and the size of this plant, that's when you do it. So July is going to be that month that you can go ahead and prune well into the plant just to reduce some of the size and the height if you wish. For the most part, Oakleaf hydrangea are going to be anywhere from, let's say, 2 foot tall all the way to 8 foot tall, okay? It depends on the variety. So definitely read your tags, make sure you know what size you're getting. But these plants do not need a lot of pruning, and that's kind of with the macrophylla hydrangea as well. They do really, really nicely if you can protect them from winter, issues. So winter protection is really, really good for them, just like the macrophyllas, and also just lighter pruning just to remove anything that's dead, diseased, or damaged on that plant, okay? So that's maintenance. Other than that, I wanted to tell you again, no hydrangea are impervious from deer browsing. And especially early season, when these plants do start to push out, you can get quite a bit of damage, okay? So just be aware of that. Make sure that if you're successful with something like netting for a barrier, that's always great on Oakleaf hydrangeas. Go ahead and toss the netting over the top of them. Let them fill out underneath. That's always a good protective, cover. Or repellent. So any repellent that you're successful with, we often recommend Plant Skid. That's our #1 repellent for us. All organic, does very, very well for the Oakleaf hydrangea. So that's something to consider too. Okay, so make sure you stay up on your repellents and mark your calendar when you're spraying. Okay, attributes. As far as these hydrangeas are concerned, as I mentioned, they're the most shade tolerant of all the hydrangeas, still able to perform in fairly deep shade. So that's a great thing. If you were to Google favorite 10 landscape plants in Northeast Ohio, you would see the Oakleaf hydrangea pop up because it has such a beautiful texture and broad rounded habit to it. Again, some of them can be very short, compact forms. Some of them can be much larger and hedge forms. It just kind of depends on the purpose that you want to use them in the landscape. But boy, that foliage texture is just outstanding, and you really don't find it on a lot of native plant material around here. A lot of the plant material that has really interesting foliage is going to be maybe from Asia or Europe, that type of thing. Okay, flowering is absolutely gorgeous. Again, you can get small or large panicles. Some of these Oakleaf hydrangea have just as large panicles as some of our true paniculata or panicle hydrangea do. So they can be very large, very floriferous, and can attract pollinators as well. So you might see a panicle like this one on Jetstream that again has the sterile flowers and then the lacy true flowers on the inside. And of course, the pollinators are going to absolutely love that. You might find some of your Oakleaf hydrangea have a very full panicle of sterile flowers, and the pollinators aren't going to really enjoy that one as much because there aren't any true flowers on it. But I'm going to tell you, those flowers, both kinds, are wonderful to use as a cut and dried flower. So please, by all means, you can cut these panicles. These panicles, again, because they're so similar to the macrophylla type, if you're going to cut a panicle for flower arranging or drying flowers, you would really, again, take the panicle and count down 2 leaf nodes again and cut above that second leaf node. So you would really only have a short stem that you can arrange by. when you're deadheading these, because again, we don't want you to move into the plant too far and disrupt any type of bud development that's going to be on those stems. You really don't have to worry about that until maybe August, and that's again when they start developing those buds again. But we want you to kind of keep the deadheading to short stems just so you don't interrupt anything. Okay, foliage. This is a phenomenal fall color foliage plant. And the leaves will turn any shade, but usually you'll see different shades of purple and red, some bronze, some burgundy. So that's typically the shades that you see. Jetstream in front of me has a little bit of orangey and red too. So again, you're getting a lot of different color, through the foliage, especially in the fall. I will also mention with these plants, they are very heat and humidity tolerant, but again, it has a lot to do with that native habit and being used to our environment here in the United States. And I think, again, being native to the southeastern United States, no problem. Heat and humidity is kind of their thing. But again, keeping that even moisture in the soil is going to be key there as well to keeping them healthy. I did want to tell you, and you might see it from the video here, that there are some spots on these leaves. And hydrangeas, you do want to keep an eye out and scout for different issues. Leaf spot is not uncommon on these hydrangeas. And again, it's a lot of different factors that go into the hydrangeas developing leaf spot. Sometimes it has to do with just overhead watering, which we do have at this nursery and most of our nurseries, that it's going to get some overhead sprinkler watering. And of course, if it's sunny out, they can get sunburn through those water droplets. But if it's cool and cloudy, other types of fungal issues can develop. So again, you might see some reddish to purplish spots on the foliage. That's not unusual with Oakleaf hydrangea. Jetstream is probably one of the best that I've seen. The foliage is fairly clean, just a few little spots on it, but this one's going to be a really good disease-resistant variety. So if you're looking for, something that has lesser spots, cleaner leaves, you'll find it with Jetstream. So that's a good variety there. What else do I want to tell you about attribute-wise? They're a lovely hydrangea, and if you are into foliage color and texture like I am, you'll really appreciate this plant and the landscape. It really is beautiful. Let's talk about varieties here. And again, I told you varieties, depending on varieties, you could get a 2-foot, Oakleaf hydrangea all the way to an 8-foot Oakleaf hydrangea. So again, just make sure you're reading your tags and you know where you're planting these, and you give the small ones enough space. Obviously, they can fit in smaller corners and things. And the large ones, you want to make sure you're giving them enough space to really fill out. Oh, I should have mentioned stems on Oakleaf hydrangea are fairly strong. They really kind of stand up really nicely. It's very rare that a rainstorm will come through and knock these over. So they're nice, strong, and sturdy multi-stem shrubs typically. And the panicles tend to stand up off the foliage, and they stand really nice and tall. So it's really nice to have that, again, that nice sturdy structure out there with this hydrangea family. Okay, let's talk about varieties. And I'm going to start with this short one. Obviously, this is a dwarf variety. This one is called Peewee. There are several dwarf varieties. Again, just check your tags. But Peewee is about a 2 to 3 footer, and you can tell very, very close to its pot right now. It is a young plant. The foliage tends to be a little bit smaller with your dwarf varieties, and then it will get a little bit larger with some of the bigger varieties. So you can sometimes see that. In a pot, I'm going to tell you, Oakleaf hydrangea really don't love being in a pot. We'll get some stretching. We'll get some dwarfs that look like they're going to be much bigger. And then when you plant them in the landscape and they're happy and they settle in, they tend to stay very small. So again, just look at those tags. But this is Peewee. Peewee is just pushing out its panicle flowers here. Beautiful bright green foliage. The panicles on peewee are a little bit smaller, again, being a dwarf, but very nice. And again, these panicles will blush and deepen in pink as they mature into the later season. And also the foliage is going to turn those hues of purpley red as well. Peewee is a very cool dwarf type that has been crossed with Snow Queen back here. And Snow Queen is one of the largest that we'll show you today. But they have made some pretty cool crosses. And actually, they were made at the National Arboretum. So I'm going to tell you about one of those next. So Peewee and Snow Queen, the National Arboretum, they came up with Ruby Slipper. Ruby Slipper is like a semi-dwarf, 3 to 5 foot, and Taylor will correct me, but I think 3 to 5 foot tall, about 3 to 5 foot wide on Ruby Slipper. Ruby Slipper gets her name from her white panicles that turn, and as they turn, they really do get into that blush pink, rose color, and then they get a nice kind of ruby red color as they mature, okay? Again, semi-dwarf, beautiful foliage again, and she'll still get those purpley red colors, burgundy colors on foliage as well. So that's an interesting cross between those two. I really like it. Okay, another one that we have here, this one is called Queen of Hearts. Queen of Hearts is also a cross between Peewee and Snow Queen, okay? Again, very unique, a little bit bigger here. So your Queen of Hearts is going to be, let's say, 4 to 6 foot tall and wide, larger foliage here, larger panicles. And these panicles, I kind of liken them to Pinky Winky, if you're familiar with that panicle hydrangea that we have and then we grow. The color starts at the base and really starts to fill up towards the top here. Again, deeper rosy red colors on the flowers, larger foliage size, really, really nice plant. Very, very pretty. Snow Queen in the back, she looks pretty big and wide. She is reaching out to this side. Snow Queen is going to be like that 4 to 6 footer, again, can get 4 to 6 foot wide as well. But again, white flowering typically with a blush, very, very nice plant too, okay? So again, look at your tags for your sizes. What's interesting is Jetstream in front of me is actually the largest at maturity of all of these hydrangeas. So Jetstream is going to be that 5 to 6 footer. So up here, folks, right? And also about the same width too, 5 to 6 foot. So Jetstream will come up and fill. But again, look at the flower power on this plant, really coming out, lots of panicles here. Foliage is, all this new foliage is really pushing out and developing through the season. You've got older panicles that have already blushed and reddened. You have newer panicles coming out. So this is a really nice Oakleaf hydrangea from First Editions. And you can tell foliage is a lot cleaner than some of the others out here. So this is going to be a newer variety for us in the landscape and looks to be like it will really do a great job for us. One last thing that I forgot to mention, attribute-wise, we consider Oakleaf hydrangea a plant that provides year-round interest. Not only do you have beautiful, bold, textured foliage for 3 growing seasons, and then, of course, you've got beautiful flowering that will last anywhere from, let's say, a month to 2 months. So good long blooms on these plants. But the other thing is in the winter, after you lose the leaves and the fall color, you will notice that you can leave the flowers on and let them stay dried in the winter. So that's going to be some winter interest. But the stems on Oakleaf hydrangea, as they get older, are exfoliating stems. So they have this beautiful sort of silvery brown coloration to them, and they are quite pretty in the wintertime. So a plant that you will be able to find something interesting to look at, to get interest in your garden year round. So that's always a great benefit when we're talking about, some of the hydrangeas as well. Okay, I think I've hit most of them. We do have other varieties, so please check us out online at petittigardencenter.com. There are many different types of oakleaf hydrangea. I think we have about 8 or 9 that are out there in production right now, all a little bit different, as you can see. And remember, they really like part shade. That is going to be the best condition for them. They can go in full sun, keep them evenly moist in that condition. They can go in deeper shade, much better than some of the other hydrangeas, and still perform very well. They love to have consistent moisture. Again, 1 inch of water 1 time per week when you're getting them established and when they're dry. So do keep an eye on your watering. Fertilize twice a year. Please fertilize your plants, right? In spring with plant tone and iron tone, and again in summer. That's always going to be great for them. And then just remember, with the pruning maintenance, they are very similar to macrophylla hydrangeas. You do not need to prune heavy into these plants. They produce their buds on old wood. So again, as they flush out in spring, just remove any of that dry, damaged, diseased, or dead off the top, just to the uppermost green growth, and you will be fine. These plants will do very well for you. Enjoy.